Well, welcome, colleagues. And I just want to start out by welcoming everyone to another exciting World Rainforest Day. I want to thank Rainforest Partnership for including me and all of my colleagues, particularly Nia and Tadzio. And I want to congratulate you on another really exciting World Rainforest Day. I'm Jonathan Jennings. I'm the Executive Director of Health and Harmony. I'll be your moderator for the next 30 or so minutes. And I'm speaking for all of us, we're so honored that we get to kick off World Rainforest Day. So thank you so much. And welcome everyone to our discussion about operationalizing the interdependence between human health, rainforest integrity, and planetary health. As many of you know, Earth's life-giving ecosystems, and particularly tropical rainforests, they underpin the existence and the thriving of humans, of global biodiversity, and of the planet's climate. We exist and thrive because of these ecosystems, and so our health and our well-being cannot be discussed separate from the health of these rainforest ecosystems. We cannot have healthy humans and healthy Homo sapiens without healthy nature, and we cannot have a healthy nature without a healthy Homo sapien species. And while this may be obvious to many of us, how do we inspire and encourage the sector-based institutions, including our own sector-based institutions, and other actors around the world, how do we inspire them to allocate their resources towards planetary health? And by that, I mean towards operationalizing the fundamental interdependence between human thriving and ecosystem thriving, and obviously planetary health. So our institutions, and I include in this global health institutions, nature conservation institutions, and climate institutions, I would argue humbly that for the last 150 years or more, we have practiced, or these institutions have practiced, a sector-based siloed approach to policies and investments and interventions. And this is a paradigm that I would humbly submit that we have to shift. And planetary health actors like the ones on the screen today are aiding this shift. So today we're going to meet 4 planetary health practitioners, Dr. Enrique Barros, Carol Devine, Laura Tesh, and Dr. Sakib Burza, who is on a plane and will join us shortly. Welcome to you all. No one person, as you know better than anybody, is a planetary health expert. And still, all of you are on the vanguard of understanding and demonstrating how to operationalize the ecological fundamental interdependence between our species and tropical rainforests in order to reverse our climate crisis and our biodiversity crisis. So welcome everyone. And without further ado, I want to ask you all the same question. I want to start by asking you to take about 2 minutes to introduce yourself, and I want you to tell us what you do, where you do it, and I want you to describe your journey into planetary health, your professional and personal journey into planetary health, your unique individual journey into addressing this interconnection between rainforests and planetary health. And I'll start with Carol, and then Laura, and then Enrique. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, and thank you everyone who's joining us on World Rainforest Day. So my name is Carol Devine. I grew up in Northern Ontario in Canada, and I'm a social scientist, a humanitarian practitioner who works for Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. And to say really quickly that we work in over 72 countries, including many countries that are rainforest countries, Brazil, Madagascar, in a collaboration with Health and Harmony, and Democratic Republic of Congo. And what MSF does is emergency medical needs-based independent assistance, humanitarian assistance. So my quick story is I've always been interested in the environment, in human rights, in justice issues, and I got the opportunity to work in a cloud forest preserve in Costa Rica, Monteverde, where a golden toad was thought to be maybe not extinct. So we removed a trail. It was extinct, but I got very interested and disturbed by species extinction, but also community solutions. I started working for Doctors Without Borders because I believe in everyone has a right to medicine, but also that Doctors Without Borders, MSF, speaks out. And then I worked in Antarctica. I think I'm almost done my time. And I went back and forth between polar work in polar regions and humanitarian work. And I saw the two as separate, like Jonathan was saying, they're so connected. If we see glaciers retreating massively. Where does that water go? What does that mean for communities in Bangladesh experiencing sea level rise? So just to say, I then went back to MSF after a polar journey, which I was very lucky to take. And I said, what is our climate perspective? What is our planetary health perspective? What is our narrative and what is our action? And then I'll say more about that later. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura.
Buju, Indinuwe Maginadak, Amin. Greetings and hello, all my relatives. Happy Rainforest Day, Solstice, and Indigenous Peoples Day in Canada. I want to thank Jonathan and all my fellow panelists, because it's a real honor to be here with you all today. And I'm joining you from the traditional lands of the Tewa people in White Shell Water Place, known today as Santa Fe, New Mexico. My name is Laura Tesh, and I'm a member of the Bad River Band of Chippewa Indians and of mixed heritage. So I bring a perspective through the lens of my two world lived experiences. So I'm a consultant and collaborator to help shift paradigms through an Indigenous lens. And my role at Health and Harmony is program director of the Radical Listening Consultancy Program. And for those of you unfamiliar with radical listening, very briefly, it's a process and methodology we use to listen to and collaborate with rainforest communities, and then to invest in their community design solutions so that their communities and the rainforest and ultimately our planet can thrive. I use the very traditional Ojibwe greeting by welcoming all my relatives. And by relatives, we don't just mean those by DNA, that are related to us by DNA. We are addressing anyone and anything that we have a relationship with. And that includes all living things. So not just other humans, but all species on the planet, and even Grandfather Rock and the Star People. So inherent in our language is this traditional knowledge that recognizes we are all connected, everything is interdependent, and the sacredness of life. And it also recognizes that as humans, we have the responsibility to honor, respect, and have reciprocal relationships with all our relatives. And so my journey to planetary health really stems from these traditional ways of knowing. And I see planetary health as this incredibly important bridge and field to educate and amplify the importance of creating all the intersectional and interdisciplinary paradigm shifts that we really need to happen in the world today. Miigwech.
Thank you, Laura. Enrique, my friend, please.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's wonderful to be here, and especially to talk with John, which I'm a big fan of John. I really like him. He's awesome, so I had to be here. Well, so I'm a family doctor in the south of Brazil. I live in a rainforest, subtropical forest, and I grew up in a family that taught me that health is much more complex than just the functions of your body. We are nature, so to be healthy, it's really to be connected or interconnected or interdependent within nature, with everything, absolutely everything. And that's what physics, biology, chemistry teaches. And it's been a very old knowledge for anyone that knows indigenous and traditional knowledge. So we're, the scientific perspective is sort of rediscovering what we already knew, right? So I grew up with that notion from my family, especially my mother, who works with psychiatry from a systems perspective therapy. And so that's my life, really. And we always thought that health and health equity are necessary so that the individual can be healthy. And planetary health is really about equity. And as Laura said, it's about health equity, but it's also about equity with the environment, with nature around us. So it makes a lot of sense to me that we need to take care of the world or the planet so that it takes care of us. That's just for starting, I think.
Thank you, Enrique. And look, right back at you, my friend. The love is mutual, and I want to be transparent with the audience. All three of these people, and Sakib, who isn't here, have been extremely influential in my own journey into planetary health. So this is a privilege for me to be able to talk to you. Now, I want to talk to each one of you about, within your own institution, within your own life, within your own professionalism, I want to understand, what does it mean to operationalize the interdependence between rainforests and people inside the institutions where you work? Carol, inside of Doctors Without Borders, Médecins, Sans Frontières, lifelong humanitarian aid worker. Laura, as someone dedicated to guiding transformational change through an indigenous lens. And Enrique, as a lifelong family doctor and a professor inside the rainforest. I want to start with Laura, and then we'll go to Carol, and then we'll go to Enrique. But I want you to give us that institutional perspective and the challenges that you faced and the successes that you've had.
Thank you, Jonathan. Well, as a consultant for over 3 decades, I have had the opportunity to work with a lot of different entities, right? Anywhere from not-for-profits and tribal organizations and governments, but a lot of corporate work and especially in the extractive industry. So I've seen, I feel like I've seen really some positive shifts that are attempting to operationalize planetary health in a very broad way. First, there's a huge, much greater appreciation of the interconnectedness of social, ecological, and economic systems. I mean, that alone took us too long to get there. But there's been a growing recognition of the value and importance of indigenous knowledge in addressing planetary health challenges. There's been shifts to embed concepts of planetary health and intersectionality in frameworks like the UN Sustainable Development Goals and corporate sustainability and ESG initiatives. We've seen greater representation of commitments to indigenous-led solutions at the UN climate change conferences and biodiversity conferences. But what's really most exciting to me is what's happening within grassroots movements and activism. Indigenous communities, land back, youth-led organizations, and other social justice movements, they're really demanding that policies and actions prioritize sustainability, social and racial equity, and the protection of ecosystems. And this is all really contributing to transformative changes across the globe. And it really demonstrates the power of collective action and the grassroots approaches that really drive systemic change. And those kinds of things are just really exciting to me. And I just hope more people support those kinds of movements.
Thank you, Laura. Carol, please.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. It's so great to hear about that journey. And just, Jonathan, you know about MSF, some of MSF's journey, but I would say Doctors Without Borders, it's been an honor and privilege and challenging, very difficult at times, but it's really a groundswell of people around the world in the 72 countries we work. Since 2017, it started, that word operationalize is so important. It started to become more institutional, that we said, we recognize the climate crisis. We have to have more responsibility. We have to have more responsible operations, not just do anything at any cost. We said we need to mitigate. We need to adapt our operations. We need to be thinking about disease anticipation and meteorological anticipation and the justice issue that so much of the world, South Sudan under 5 years of flooding, Pakistan under flooding, Bangladesh without enough cyclone shelters. So we as a movement in 2017, it started to become more institutionalized that we're going to mitigate these, very UN language, but a way to frame it, mitigate, adapt, and advocate. And at the same time, there's also the, evolution, revolution going on about if we're going to decarbonize, we can't do it without decolonizing. The two are intertwined. We're in a big shift. We have these cascading crises all at once where people cannot cope. What do we learn from Indigenous peoples who've survived and suffered, but also are stewarding the land? So just to say, the really quick MSF story was, you know, like the Pied Piper, once we decided we were going to, in 2017, we were going to get serious about it, things have really moved, and it's due to people taking risks, you know, collaborating radically, you know, trialing and testing solutions. But we, you know, back in 2019, we connected climate and 2016, climate and malaria. We were putting trees at clinics. We were doing it intuitively, but then we said, let's do it consciously and let's set goals for ourselves. Let's commit to work with others and communities. And there's been a groundswell. We have a transformational investment capacity where we're working to cut emissions. At the same time, we're working with communities on waste initiatives. And then the project in Madagascar, which maybe Sakib will mention, where we're working with Health in Harmony. How do we help with those health solutions, but also be thinking of communities and planetary health more consciously? So this, you know, planetary health language is much more, it's growing, it's embedded. There's so many people who are getting involved, and we have to keep thinking about these cascading crises. And yeah, we're changing from the inside out, and it's the necessary piece.
Bravo, and kudos to you and other leaders inside Doctors Without Borders who are making that change real. Thank you so much. Enrique, from your point of view, with Wonka as a family doctor, talk to us a bit about from your perspective. You mentioned that your family and your life in the forest first gave you this perspective, but has your perspective as a doctor with the patient changed, and if so, how?
So first, I'll give a perspective on my local community, which has 6,000 people, villages around the mountains in the rainforest. And then I'll try to give a perspective of the global point of view from the World Organization of Family Doctors. So a few days ago, we had a very, very extreme climate event in my community, the region. It rained the most for the month of June ever in history, in recorded history. So it's obviously climate change. And my students couldn't come to the clinic, and the clinic where I would work as a professor, the patients were taken by boat from inside the clinic. So this is very this is very real, unfortunately. And I think we're just 1.1 degrees Celsius, right? So it's going to be very ugly, and people are starting to understand. So today I had a meeting about emotional education for school children with the mayor, and I've been talking about this for 13 years, and people say that I'm crazy. But today the mayor said, well, this is nature taking care of herself. So people are starting to grasp, and the grassroots that I've been trying to do here is getting some results. At least people understand more. So practical things that I try to do, I try to reinforce notions of natural healing, right? That people learned with indigenous knowledge from centuries ago. So many plants and many different forms of healing. Instead of saying that it's wrong, that science doesn't support it, I say, well, does it work? Well, then do it. Because many times the scientific way is not very well proved, and it can be harmful. So in that way, I reinforce the connection. So that's just one example. Then I talk to my patients how in their life and the way they treat themselves, can make a better connection with nature. For instance, if you're depressed, go take walks in the wild, right? Because people just have a disconnect and they don't go to the waterfalls, which are wonderful here, and they get depressed, and they should reconnect with that. So that's from the local perspective. And from the global perspective of WONCA, it's really exciting. They invited me for one of the keynotes in Sydney for the conference, the World Conference, to talk about planetary health. So it's
Enrique,
really...
Sorry, can you just tell, for the audience, WONCA, can you let people know what WONCA is? Thank you.
It's the World Organization of Family Doctors for general practitioners or family physicians, right? So it's really getting a lot of traction and a lot of attention. And we're really getting it into medical schools curriculum. In Brazil, it's been really much faster than I thought. But I know it's also happening in Europe and in medical schools, some medical schools in the US. So that's very symbolic, right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And you whenever we're together, you're often telling me stories. And one was the air purification story that you told me. So I'm always thinking of you whenever I'm talking to doctors around me about how their practice at bedside is making the links. So thank you, Enrique. Sakib, welcome. Can you hear us? All right.
I can. My sincere apologies for being late.
No problem.
We in the immigration line.
We knew it. We knew it was going to happen. So let's go to Sakib. Sakib, talk to us about your journey into planetary health. Talk to us a little bit about where you came from and how you came to arrive as a doctor, as a medical doctor, how you came to arrive to a point in your professional life where you recognize the fundamental ecological interconnectedness between the health of, well, all species on the planet, but particularly Homo sapiens, people, and rainforest integrity. Talk to us about your journey.
Okay, so yeah, first of all, I must apologize if you hear some sounds in the background. There's some announcements and so on. So look, I'm a physician by training, and I have spent the most part of the last 20 years working with MSF and ICRC and other organizations. I've worked across Northern Africa, Eastern Africa, the Middle East, and for the last 6 or 7 years working primarily across Asia. And I was really seeing the same sorts of problems in two perspectives. First of all, the number of times that I was starting earlier in my career responding to floods and cyclones, which towards the second decade of my career, we no longer really responded to as much because it became so normal and so part of the process that when we plan an emergency response plan for a country, it would be a case of, well, we know the floods are coming, it's an annual thing, so it's no longer that much of a priority when it comes to response. And that really started to make me see how things were really starting to evolve and change over time. And part of this was really thinking a little bit about what the impact of climate change has been on population movement, population displacements, on employment and productivity, on the need for economic stability and livelihoods, which forces people to move from different places, and also it forces wars and puts the burner under conflict in many of these situations. So, I actually had the benefit of working with Jonathan in India back in 2010 when we were working on scaling up large-scale nutrition problems. And of course, nutrition being a perfect example of a condition, malnutrition, chronic undernutrition, which is directly related and proportional to climate change. So this really made me, Jonathan at that point used to talk to me a lot about what the interlinkages and how we couldn't have good human health without a healthy planet and vice versa. At the beginning, it didn't really make sense to me because I thought, Jonathan's a tree hugger, take what he says with a grain of salt. But over time, I really started to see what he was saying and recognize it to be true. So really, after a combination of that and a combination of the need to move away from out-of-the-box solutions that we tend to impose on countries and populations that we work in. The kind of the paradigm of humanitarian aid, maybe really start to think that the solutions to many of these problems are actually sitting with indigenous populations who know the source of the problems when it comes to climate change. They're the first ones to suffer from it, and they know and they understand the interlinkages that the completely opposite to a siloed approach, the need for systems-based approaches to solve these problems, which come inherently clear to them. I mean, planetary health for me, was a new concept. But when you speak to indigenous populations and you speak to those who are living in and around these rainforests, this is something that's part and parcel of the way they think for centuries. So, for us, it's a new kind of science, but it really isn't. And, I think that's really what move me into it. And the second part of the thing that made me really interested was the fact that a lot of the planetary health work is quite abstract. It's very conceptual when it comes to the science side of things. And Health and Harmony and organizations like Health and Harmony are trying to operationalize this, just to try and put this into practice, to see, okay, well, what does planetary health really mean when it comes to implementing and connecting the dots on the ground? And how can we build that evidence base? Because, because it's planetary health, because it sounds nice, because everybody's interested in climate change, doesn't give it a free pass when it comes to evidence base. Things we need to do them based on evidence and based on results. So this is part of the reason why I took such an interest in Health and Harmony's work, because the work that we do is really based. We really focus on developing that evidence base, operationalizing planetary health. So I've spoken a lot, so I'll finish there.
No, that's wonderful. I mean, your journey, I think, is one that a lot of MDs, a lot of doctors, a lot of healthcare workers, nurses, midwives, et cetera, are taking. And I, as you've all heard me say many times, I believe you're on the front lines of planetary healing. So anytime a healthcare worker can adopt that interdependent, that ecological, that planetary health, that understanding that the health of a rainforest half a world away impacts my health and my family's health, whether I live in Beijing, Johannesburg, Stockholm, or New York City. Laura, can I come back to you? And we only have about 10 minutes left, and I want to come back to everybody for a quick call to action. But Laura, before we do that, can you talk to us about something Sakib mentioned and something Enrique also mentioned, the role of indigenous knowledge and wisdom in assisting humanity to solve grand challenges that in many times their societies and their cultures weren't part and parcel of creating the grand challenges. And you can come at that from any direction that you're comfortable with, but what is your perspective on that, on organizations like the one that you're with, but others that you've been with, et cetera?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's there's a lot of ways that could approach that question. We've gone so long with not acknowledging traditional ecological knowledge, without acknowledging the inherent science that indigenous peoples hold, and how much of that is actually embedded in language and culture and everything else. And now to be acknowledging and reaching out to indigenous communities to collaborate, to help design solutions is a wonderful thing. However, there's so much of that going on in some ways without the awareness that you need to start way back, that, there's a history of harm there that needs to be reconciled and understood, that because of all sorts of equity issues, they might not have the capacity to just jump in and start something with you. And quite frankly, you got to put your time in and build trust. And I think the preparation and the respect that's needed to reach out and work with indigenous communities is often way often too overlooked, and that time, the concept of time around being able to achieve that, building relationships, building trust, and help, asking what do they need as support is just gonna, it's you. The other establishments are not defining what that time is. I don't know if I've addressed what you asked.
Yeah. No. It was more of a question for me to learn from you, and we've worked together a long time, and as I said, you're someone who's contributed immensely to my perspective, as all of you have. We have just under 5 minutes, and so I want to get a call to action from each of you, and I think something I have said in front of audiences, and I have said this in front of partners and multinationals and governments and bingos. I personally don't feel like any institution that exists on the planet today is built for the purpose of outmaneuvering the climate crisis, biodiversity crisis, and I would include social justice, because of the siloed nature of our institutions and the siloed nature, the compartmentalized nature of our thinking to a large extent. Now, I don't expect your call to action to address what I believe to be the case, but I would like to hear your call to action to other leaders inside other institutions, whether those are academic medical schools, whether they are big non-governmental organizations, whether they are donors or governments. What is your call to action to leaders inside these other institutions where the importance and the possibility of operationalizing planetary health inside their own institutions is concerned? And let's start with, we'll go with Carol, and then Laura, and then Enrique, and then Sakib. Is that okay?
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. Don't know if I can do all of that, but really quickly, Laura, I just wanted to reiterate what I heard, because I think it's so valuable what you said about building relationship, trust, respect, preparation, time, and ask what people need. I think that that's so valuable. So I just want to echo that with my limited time. I want to say, you know, what I've seen, the amazing leadership in MSF from all around the world about working with others, about stretching ourselves about what we do and how we do it. We have to work in new ways. And I want to really push for fighting for healthcare and access to medicines for all, and this equity, decolonizing piece. I think we have to name the problem. Let's call out the fossil fuel companies within our organizations and without, money, justice. And I really want to call for humanity. And I'm not really talking about MSF, but just saying what we've learned from working in these 72 countries where the patients are ourselves, and especially those disproportionately impacted and excluded, and solidarity, because as Sakib said, we have to fight for people and species to be able to move and move safely. So I think, you know, just to my last point is with MSF, nature-based solutions, ecosystem solutions, that was seen, as you said, Jonathan, at the beginning, that was Greenpeace, that was other people's domain. We can't think that way anymore. It's all our domain, and we're all responsible, and some more than others. Thank you.
Yeah. Carol, thank you very much. And Laura, Enrique, and Sakib, 20 seconds, please.
Well, okay, call to action. Reevaluate your values, because if you that's where it starts. Your core values dictate how you operate in the world. Embrace a mindset of humility, reciprocity, respect, and stewardship, and then live it. I have a lot more, but
beautiful. Thank you. Enrique, 20 seconds, your call to action, my friend.
For primary care providers, understand the problem and talk to your patients about climate change, about pollution. And at the global level, we should convince the World Health Organization to call for recognizing the climate emergency, and sort of like COVID. That's the level of commitment we need from the health organizations.
Here, well said. Thank you. Sakib, the last word, 20 seconds.
I'll keep it very short. What I would say is for leaders of organizations, and not just health, conservation, livelihoods, to be curious and to think about how they can work together to solve this problem. The time of working in our silos is over. The only way that we're going to get the solution out is by listening to the people who have the knowledge, who understand what's going on, and working in a systems-based approach to solve this crisis that humanity have caused, but are also the solution for. Thanks.
Thank you all so much. My heart goes out to each one of you. Thank you so much for being here. World Rainforest Day audience, thank you for being here. Nia, Tadzio, and Rainforest Partnership, thank you so much for including us in our perspectives. And now it's over to you. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you to all of our speakers for that brilliant first session. That was a really great way to kickstart our summit. We're going to transition to our next session in just under 10 minutes. I want to just remind everybody who's on the map or anybody who just joined and wasn't here for our first announcement, you'll see there's a map right here. That's where all of our networking is going to happen. I ask that everybody please move away from the orange space in the top corner. Go anywhere on the map, but let's try to keep that orange space clear for our speakers so we can get all the sessions up and running smoothly. Thank you so much again to Health and Harmony for putting that session together, and to all our speakers. And we will see you at our next session in just a few minutes.